Hi, I'm Kathleen. My sister invited me to her wedding, but there was no chair for me, not even one in the back. I stood there like a shadow until my son said one sentence that shattered everything. That baby in her belly? It wasn't her fiancé's, it was my ex-husband's. Why would a family let that happen and still call it love? Have you ever been erased from your own family's story? What's the worst betrayal you've experienced? Was it loud and cruel or quiet and calculated? What time is it where you're watching from, and what city are you in? I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums after a long shift and a short dinner. Colton was already asleep, one sock on, one off, curled against his dinosaur pillow. I dropped my keys on the counter and saw it. White envelope, thick, gold-edged, elegant like something pulled out of a lifestyle magazine. No return address, but I knew. My fingers hesitated, but I opened it anyway. A wedding invitation. Tiffany's name was scrawled in calligraphy above Ethan's, her fiancé, the one with a six-figure smile and a trust fund jawline. The ceremony would be held at the Rosewood Mansion, the most expensive venue in Dallas. My eyes scanned the card for details. I read it twice before I realized what was missing. No seat number, no table assignment, just, "We'd love for you to attend and witness our celebration, standing room available." I didn't flinch, I didn't curse, I didn't even blink. I just stood there with that card in my hand and a sudden stillness in my chest. It wasn't a mistake, it was a message. 2 days later, the group chat lit up. Mom's family planning chat was filled with cake samples, flower mock-ups, bridesmaid selfies. And then Tiffany posted a photo of the seating chart. There it was, each name written in her looping, curated handwriting. Mom and Dad were up front, cousin Jenna next to the band, Ethan's parents dead center. Colton wasn't mentioned, and I wasn't there. Not even as an afterthought. "Looks elegant, baby," Mom replied. No one asked, no one noticed. Or maybe they did and chose not to. I read it again, then a third time. Then I tapped out. Quiet exit. No drama. That night, I stood at the sink scrubbing Colton's lunchbox, scrubbing away grape jelly and dried mac and cheese. My mind flicked back to my wedding, the one that barely filled a church basement, where Hal smiled with his mouth and lied with his eyes. He left 3 months later, said he wasn't ready to be a father. But the family didn't call to check on me. They called Tiffany. "She's worried sick about you," Mom had said. Worried sick. That was rich. I slid the invitation into my journal, next to doctor's bills and old ultrasound photos. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because forgetting it would feel like letting it happen again. I used to think family meant having a seat at the table. Turns out, it's just a list. One you can be erased from without anyone blinking. She didn't need to cross my name out. It was never written in the first place. But it wasn't just a forgotten chair, it was a rehearsal, and everyone else had a script but me. I showed up with a wrapped box in one hand and Colton's fingers in the other. It was a silver photo frame, expensive enough to pass for thoughtful, impersonal enough to mean nothing. Tiffany's registry listed 10 of them. Eleanor opened the door before I knocked. Her smile was wide, rehearsed. Franklin hovered behind her, chin tucked like he hadn't expected me to come. Maybe he hadn't. "We didn't think you'd stop by," she said, stepping aside. "Tiffany's resting upstairs." I stepped in. The air smelled like eucalyptus and chicken broth. A table near the entry was covered in white roses, candle votives, and Tiffany's engagement photos. Colton walked toward the display with childlike curiosity, fingers already reaching for the crystals dangling from a centerpiece. "Not too close, sweetie," Eleanor said gently, pulling him back. "We don't want any pictures to be cluttered." Cluttered. That was the word. I wasn't angry, just noted it, like someone noting the temperature before deciding which coat to wear. Colton tugged my sleeve when we were sitting in the living room. His voice was quiet but certain. "Grandma said I shouldn't hug Aunt Tiffany at the wedding." I turned to him. "Why?" "She said it'd mess up her look." Eleanor, across the room, turned the page of a magazine. Franklin coughed. "They didn't cut me out. They airbrushed me, like I was a flaw to be filtered, not faced." Franklin offered tea. I declined. Tiffany appeared 10 minutes later in white silk and bare feet. Her skin looked polished. Her expression didn't. "Oh," she said, eyebrows arched. "Didn't know you'd drop by." I forced a smile. "Figured I'd see where the stage was." She laughed, light and sharp. "You're always dramatic." If I were dramatic, I would have flipped the glass table. Instead, I just watched who kept holding the knives. We made small talk about the weather, about Colton's height, about nothing. Then I left the gift on the console and took my son home. The wedding hadn't started, but the roles were already cast, and I wasn't in the script. Tuesday started like every other. I dropped Colton off at school, reminded him to zip his coat, kissed his forehead, and told him I'd see him after work. I didn't expect anything unusual, just another ordinary day wrapped in routine. But the email came before I even got to the hospital. Subject line, "Colton's artwork thought you'd want this." Attached was a scanned drawing from Miss Downey, his teacher. The subject, "My family." At first I smiled. Crayon scribbles, stick figures with happy faces, green grass, a yellow sun. Typical 6-year-old sentiment. But when I looked closer, my stomach dropped. There was Colton in the center, arms outstretched between two adults. One was clearly me, brown hair, blue scrubs. But the other two? A man and a woman holding hands. The man wore a red baseball cap. The woman had long blonde curls, Hal, Tiffany. I enlarged the image on my screen until the pixels blurred. My hand was cold on the mouse pad. 16 months ago, Colton came home from a weekend with my parents during Christmas break. I was working 48-hour shifts, barely sleeping. That night, I was folding laundry when he said, "Mommy, I saw Daddy today. He was at the park with Aunt Tiffy. They were laughing." I remember forcing a smile, brushing it off as confusion. Daddy and Aunt Tiffy? Surely he had it wrong. Kids mix things up. But kids don't draw what they don't remember. The paper was proof of something I didn't want to believe. Not a theory, a memory in wax. I leaned back in my chair, felt the silence close in like smoke. Had it been happening while I was juggling extra shifts to pay rent? When I had to call off his birthday trip because the power bill came in twice as high? While I was begging the pharmacy to extend Colton's asthma prescription on a bounced check? Tiffany never offered help. She offered curated pity and her silence. Meanwhile, she was borrowing what wasn't hers, not money, but the past, my past. They didn't ask permission, because theft only needs silence, not approval. I didn't text her. I didn't forward the email to Mom. Instead, I printed the drawing, folded it clean, slipped it into my purse between a grocery receipt and a pack of tissues. She gave Colton a secret. He just gave it back, without even knowing. Saturday morning arrived quiet and cold, the kind that made you want to stay in flannel pajamas longer than necessary. I was halfway through folding towels when the doorbell rang. Colton sprinted to answer, but I got there first. A man in a branded polo handed over a white garment bag. "Special delivery for Colton Miller," he smiled. My stomach dropped before I even unzipped it. Inside was a navy vest, tiny leather dress shoes, a crisp white shirt with matching bow tie. Pinned to the fabric was a pale pink note card with handwriting I knew too well. "Hope he'll be the perfect little gentleman, and let's keep the chatter short, okay?" Tiff. Colton's eyes lit up. "Mom, look, I get to dress like Ethan." I smiled, not because I meant it. Some gifts are about generosity. Some are about dressing someone up so they look like they belong, until they speak. This one came with a built-in gag order disguised in tulle. That night, Colton was unusually quiet before bed. I brushed his hair off his forehead as he tucked himself under the dinosaur blanket. "Mom," he said softly, "why is Aunt Tiffy scared I'll talk?" I froze. "What do you mean, baby?" "She told me not to say stuff at the wedding, but I didn't even say anything bad." I kept my voice calm. "What do you think she's scared of?" He shrugged. "Maybe because of what I saw in the park?" The room shrank around me. I kissed his forehead and turned off the light, but my heart hadn't moved an inch. Back in the kitchen, the dress bag still hung near the door, pristine, untouched. I grabbed it, opened the trash can, hovered. Then I stopped. Let her have her show. But I'd be watching now, not with anger, with clarity. She didn't send that suit for him. She sent it for herself, to control the script, to keep him from becoming the one voice she couldn't mute. She gave him a costume, hoping to silence the truth. But kids don't act, they live it. The break room smelled like old coffee and someone's forgotten microwaved broccoli. I was trying to tune out the buzz of small talk when Nora, one of the ER nurses, slid her phone across the table to me. "You related to her?" she asked, tapping the screen. "Didn't know you had a famous sister." I looked down. Tiffany Barnes, only child, talks motherhood and elegance before big day. The headline was bad enough, but the photo? That was the knife. Tiffany in a flowing white robe, perfectly lit, her hand resting on our mother's shoulder. Mom smiled like she had waited her whole life for that moment. The caption read, "Nothing stronger than a bond between a mother and her daughter." I didn't say a word. I slid the phone back. My chest didn't rise, it stayed still. By the time I got home, the ad had made its rounds. Colton was sitting on the couch, watching a YouTube clip that had autoplayed. Tiffany's bridal shoot, music, soft light, fake laughter. He turned to me. "Where are you in the video, Mommy?" I paused. "Nowhere." He blinked, then quietly clicked the screen off. I didn't need him to say anything else. Later that night, I opened my planner, pulled a blank page from the back, and wrote a letter. Not to Tiffany, not to my mother, to myself. "You're not invisible. They're just blind by choice." Then I printed out the headline, folded it in half, and pinned it next to the letter. Some people memorialize pain with tattoos. I used paper. They had taken the final step. Not just exclusion, erasure. There would be no photos of me in Tiffany's wedding album, no mention in the magazine features. No one would know that the woman raising Colton existed on that side of the family tree. But I did. I existed. Fully, loudly, even in silence. I used to think that family was something sacred, something unbreakable. But maybe it's just branding. A curated image for the people who play along. If their world had no space for me, I'd stop asking and start building mine outside their frame. It was a Thursday when she called. Not for Colton's birthday, not for a family emergency, just a soft voice on the other end of the line that said, "I think we should talk about the past." I almost hung up. Instead, I said, "Come over." The apartment was spotless, the kind of clean that smelled like lemon and avoidance. I didn't light candles. I didn't set out coffee. They weren't guests. They were ghosts finally walking back in. Eleanor arrived first, her smile tight. Franklin trailed behind, coat still on, like he wasn't planning to stay long. They sat. I didn't. "We knew," she said. 3 syllables, no build-up. "We knew about Tiffany and Hal." My hand stayed still on the counter. I didn't need theatrics. I needed clarity. "We thought it was just a phase. Then, she got pregnant, and she said—" Franklin interrupted, voice quieter than a sigh. "She said if we tried to stop the wedding, she'd tell the press, the DNA, that Hal was the father." My breath didn't catch. It landed flat. She said she'd ruin everything. The sponsors, the venue, Ethan's family. "And after what you went through, what I went through?" I laughed once. Not out loud, just inside. "You let her dangle my past over your heads like a price tag, like her shame was mine to carry." Eleanor looked down. "We were trying to protect—" "No, you were trying to preserve. Your image, her fantasy." Franklin cleared his throat uselessly. "We didn't know what else to do." "You do now." I didn't yell. I opened the door. They stood, neither looking me in the eye. I didn't hug them. They didn't ask. Before Eleanor stepped into the hallway, I said, "You chose your narrative. I'm done being the silent villain in it." She turned slightly, lips parted, but no words came. "And if she uses my story again," I added, "I'll tell it myself." Next time she uses my story to sell her version of Grace, I'll be ready, with mine. The TV was already on when I walked into the break room. I wasn't paying attention until Nora, one of the nurses, said, "Isn't that your sister?" I looked up. I didn't need to ask which screen. There she was, Tiffany, outside a bridal salon in uptown Dallas, her face contorted in rage, a camera inches from her cheekbone. "You people never accepted me," she screamed at a woman I recognized instantly as Mrs. White. "This baby doesn't need your money." The clip cut sharply. A bold caption flashed across the screen. "Viral bride meltdown," and beneath it, a hashtag that took the air out of my chest. #TiffanyGate. The room fell silent, then filled with stifled laughter. I said nothing, Just reached for my coffee and sipped it like the world wasn't cracking open. She looks familiar, someone muttered again. She's my sister, I said, and didn't offer more. By lunch, it was everywhere. Twitter threads, TikTok reactions, Reddit sleuths cross-referencing past sponsorships. Her Instagram comments went from curated praise to firestorms. Tiffany's brand, clean, calm, curated, had combusted. Even Colton felt it. I picked him up early from school after his teacher called. A classmate had whispered, "Is that your aunt on TikTok?" And another asked if she really screamed at that grandma. He didn't cry. But when I strapped him into his booster seat, he looked out the window and asked, "Is she okay?" I didn't answer. At home, I opened my phone to 3 missed calls and a text. You know, they edited that, right? They made me look crazy. I stared at it. Then I posted a photo of Colton and me at a used bookstore, his hand in mine, a paperback pressed against his chest. Caption: Some truths don't trend, but they last. No hashtags, no names, no pity. Tiffany had built her empire on silence, my silence, Mom's silence, Ethan's silence. Now it was collapsing under the weight of her own voice. I wouldn't post her downfall. I wouldn't celebrate her flames. But I wouldn't put them out either. Let the fire burn. I'm not saving anyone this time. The ballroom gleamed like a magazine spread. Gold-rimmed plates, white roses curling out of crystal vases, chandeliers dripping overhead like frozen fireworks. Every surface had been polished. Every guest rehearsed their smiles. Every camera turned toward Tiffany. She descended the staircase in satin and shimmer, hand nestled in Ethan's elbow, a pageant smile glued to her face. Applause filled the room, polite and controlled. I stood at the edge of it all, navy dress pressed, spine straighter than usual. Colton clutched my hand, his bow tie slightly crooked. We weren't seated. We weren't part of the plan, just tolerated scenery. Ethan greeted me with the same softness he had the first time we met. "Glad you came," he said. I nodded once. I wondered if he knew he'd regret those words before the night ended. "This isn't a wedding," I whispered to myself. "It's a production, and every camera's pointed at the wrong actor." They cut the cake with silver knives wrapped in pearl. The room cooed. Flashes popped. Colton tugged my arm. I bent down. "Mom," he said, voice too loud in a room that didn't expect honesty. "Isn't it funny that Aunt Tiffy says the same things Daddy Hal used to say?" Everything stopped. Forks froze midair. Smiles stuttered. The silence stretched so long it echoed. Tiffany blinked. Then again, her lips parted. No words came. Ethan's gaze turned to me, then to her. He slowly removed her hand from his sleeve. "What is he talking about?" No one answered. I didn't have to. 2 days later, I opened an email from Ethan. "Thank you for not speaking up that night. But your son did." Attached was a PDF, 1-page lab header, bold black letters. Paternity result, not the father. I read it once, then again. Closed the laptop. No outrage, no release, just breath. A follow-up line in Ethan's message. "Your silence gave me the space to see everything." She lied, but you didn't twist the knife. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Not because I won, because I didn't need to. There would be no social post, no quote for a blog, no public unraveling. The truth had already cut where it mattered. I didn't cut the cake. But the truth did. Clean, quiet, deep. The knock came soft, almost embarrassed. I had just finished draining pasta, Colton humming to himself as he colored at the table. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, opened the door, and there she was. Tiffany. Not the version in bridal satin or sponsored posts. Just Tiffany. Hair pulled back, no makeup. Eyes swollen, dark circled. A diaper bag slung over one shoulder. In her arms, a baby wrapped in a faded blanket. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Her voice cracked in the middle like she hadn't used it in days. I stepped aside, not because I forgave her, just because I wasn't going to leave a baby standing in the hall. She sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't belong in furniture anymore. Her hands never left the baby. "Mason," she whispered when I asked. Colton peeked around the corner, then quietly disappeared into his room. "I lost everything," she said. "Ethan, my manager, Mom won't call me back." I said nothing. Boiled water hissed behind me. I turned off the stove. "I became what I used to mock," she said. and I deserve it. I handed her a cup of tea, placed gently on the coffee table. She didn't reach for it, just kept her eyes on Mason. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't need to. She looked at me. Do you think Colton should know his brother? I didn't answer right away, just watched her for a moment. They're brothers, she said again, quieter this time. Even if we're not. I nodded once. He can know him. You can visit. But we're not going back to anything, not what we were. I know, she said. No tears, just resignation. The sky outside dimmed as the baby slept in her arms. She stayed until the sun dipped low, then stood without prompting. She didn't ask for a hug. I didn't offer one. When the door clicked shut behind her, I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt still. Some wounds don't close. They scar, quietly, without apology. Colton walked in, rubbing his eyes. Is Aunt Tiffany okay? Not yet, I said, tucking his hair behind his ear. But maybe one day. Maybe one day we'll sit at the same table again. But not at her wedding and not as who we were. Sometimes healing doesn't mean putting all the pieces back together. Sometimes it just means learning to live with the ones you have left. I didn't get an apology wrapped in ribbon. I didn't get redemption through headlines. What I got was clarity, space, and the chance to define myself without their script. We all have someone who wrote us out of the story. But you get to choose whether that silence becomes your ending or your beginning. What about you? Have you ever forgiven someone without letting them back in? Have you ever built peace out of distance? If this story touched your heart or made you reflect, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, tell me why. I'm here to listen. If you'd like to hear more stories that cut deep, stay human, and always find the light, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next.